Try not to knock it off. Are we ready? 6 o'clock. All right, I think we're going to get started. On behalf of the Ankeny Chamber of Commerce Government Relations Committee, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Iowa House Public Forum. My name is Alex Lynch. I'm part of the Economic Development Team for the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and I'll be your moderator this evening. We have candidates from both House District 41 and 42 here with us this evening. We'll be hosting our Senate District 21 candidates at 7:30. We thank you for being here, and for those that couldn't attend, this is being recorded and will be posted on Facebook event page on the Ankeny Area Chamber page. The mission of Government Relations Committee is to provide communication and education on government action and policy issues that may impact our membership by facilitating the efficient exchange of information between our members and our elected officials. Please note that the forum rules and regulations that let us conduct a meaningful and respectful forum. The Government Relations Committee strives to make the forum neutral and fair to all candidates. If you are recording this forum, we ask that you use the recording in its entirety so that nothing is taken out of context. Our forum tonight will carry the following format. We'll have opening remarks by each candidate. They'll be allowed 3 minutes for that. After that, we'll have questions from the chamber membership and audience, 2 minutes for each response from each candidate, and then closing remarks, 3-minute timeline for each candidate. We did a call for questions to all the Ankeny Area Chamber of Commerce members and to all our Government Relations Committee members. The questions for tonight were taken from those submitted by each group. We have also asked those in the audience to provide questions, and those will be taken at the end if time permits. Members of our committee, Mark Land and Jen Walter, will be collecting those questions, so if you have questions, get a piece of paper from them and you can write that question down. Please remember to ask questions for all candidates to answer and not point your question to one candidate or another. This forum will follow the act of civility. Civility is the act of showing regard for others by being polite. Civility comes from the Latin word civilis, which means relating to public life befitting a citizen. In other words, being friendly and nice to everyone. All certified candidates were invited to participate in these forums and were provided the forum rules in advance. And so now we'll ask our questions. We've done a random draw, and our order will start with Heather Matson. We'll rotate so that everyone has the opportunity to answer a question first. So Heather, you get to start with your introduction.
First thing, remember to turn on the microphone. Thank you so much to the Chamber for hosting. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you to everyone for coming. My name is Heather Matson. I'm a mom, a wife, a community advocate, a policy advocate, and a former state representative. I've spent the last 23 years working and volunteering in public policy, advocacy, and development. I am proud to serve locally on the boards of the Ankeny Service Center and the Ankeny Kiwanis Club, and I'm also a parent member of the School Improvement Advisory Committee. My husband, Chris, who's here with me tonight, is a family doctor at Broadlawns, and we've lived in Ankeny for almost a decade. Our twins, Emma and Henry, are in 7th grade at Parkview Middle School. I'm running because I believe voters deserve a much more open and honest conversation about some of the challenges and opportunities that we have in this state. My focus, as always, is on making sure that no matter where you live in Iowa, you have both economic security and economic opportunity. Because to me, life is about more than surviving, it's about thriving. And that means having policies in place at the state level that actually help people flourish. Whether it's recommitting to strong public schools, growing our workforce by investing in childcare and affordable housing, protecting reproductive rights, prioritizing small businesses and quality of life initiatives, or building an economically and environmentally sustainable future, our community deserves a leader who is focused on building trusted partnerships across party lines here in Ankeny and at the Capitol. I believe in being aspirational with public policy. As legislators, we should be looking 10, 20, even 50 years down the road and setting bold goals for where we want this state to be. And making sure that those goals include putting people first, and then making Iowa a welcoming state and creating the policies to help us get there. We far more than our party affiliation. We are people first, people who are neighbors and friends and in this community together. And it is inevitable that we will disagree because that is part of life. But the strength of our democracy is how we choose to work through those disagreements. I believe in leading through listening and learning in good faith. And my commitment is to always be building community. That is what I've always done and what I will continue to do. Thank you so much.
I'd like to also thank the Chamber for putting on this forum for us. This is an excellent opportunity to get in front of you all and let you know what we're all about, which we all are working very hard to do and which isn't always easy to do in a local election. I'd like to also thank the people of Ankeny for entrusting me 2 years ago to be their state representative. We were in the middle of COVID. I think we all remember that very strongly. Our schools were closed, our businesses were closed, and people were scared. People didn't know what was going to come next. My first action as your state representative was to deliver on a promise I made that would give our parents and families a chance for their students to attend school full time. I've also been proud to vote for not one but 2 historic tax cuts that have also opened the door for economic success and for future tax cuts as well, as we still have a historic surplus. I've also worked to increase quality and affordable mental health care and child care, something I'm much more familiar with now that I'm a dad. I'm running again to continue the work I've started to make sure that our communities are safe, our families have access to quality education, and are able to keep more of their hard-earned money. Out of control inflation has families struggling everywhere. But because of what we've done in the Iowa legislature, Iowans are much better off than our peers in other states. Rather than a tax and spend mentality like seen in Washington, D.C., or our neighbor Illinois, here in Iowa, we've budgeted responsibly and cut taxes for every Iowan. I promise to continue down this path of responsible budgeting that funds your priorities and lets you keep more of your money to help you through inflation and so that you can be in charge of your financial future. As I said before, becoming a dad in this last year has really helped my perspective on what Ankeny families need. Last time, I was only listening and learning about what a family was. Now I get to experience firsthand what it is. I'm proud to serve this community and my family by allowing freedom from an overbearing and overreaching government. Thank you.
I too would like to start by thanking the Chamber for putting on this event. I really think this is an important way for us to all be heard and get our voices out there and let you know what our ideas are. And I would also like to thank everybody who took time out of their evening to come out tonight and listen to what we all have to say. That's how the process starts. My name is Molly Buck, and I'm a teacher here in Ankeny. I've taught in Ankeny for 18 years. But I've devoted the last 26 years of my life to public service as a teacher. I truly love teaching. In my heart of hearts, I am a teacher, and I believe in the transformational power of education. I've served in many leadership capacities in my job, and honestly, the first 20 years of teaching for me were pretty apolitical. Teaching here in Iowa, I came here in 1998, was the utopia of teaching until about 2017. In 2017, I was serving as the president of the Ankeny Education Association when Chapter 20 hit the chopping block, and our collective bargaining rights were stripped, and then education was kind of catapulted into the political arena. It's kind of ultimately why I threw my hat into this race. I'm not a career politician, and as I was explaining to Marvis earlier, this has been quite a learning experience for me. I want to be a strong voice for children and families in Iowa, and I want to be a strong voice for public education. But education isn't my only reason for running. I really am a multifaceted candidate, and I'm ready to use my voice to help every Iowan. In 2020, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. I had surgery right as the pandemic hit, and COVID shut everything down. I was honestly lucky to have surgery when I did, or I wouldn't have been able to with the hospital shut down. I got an up close and personal view of our healthcare system, the price of prescription drugs, and the complexities of medical billing. I also got an up-close view of the workforce shortages in our hospitals. I decided that summer to go back to school in the fall, and I taught during continuous chemo, and I taught during, while I was having radiation every day after school. And I tried to be as uplifting as possible for the kids who were struggling with the overwhelming demands of pandemic learning. And I'm committed to working that hard to find win-win solutions for this community and for all Iowa families. I believe in putting people over politics and making sure that Iowa is a great place for everyone.
Good evening, everyone. And I also would like to thank the Chamber and each and every one of you for being here to talk about things that are important to you and that are important to Iowa. I am Martis Landon, and I am running for House District 41. This evening, to start off with, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to tell you the 3 things that people have told me that I should put in first as priorities as I door knock through House District 41. I grew up on a farm where I learned a strong work ethic. I got a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Missouri, Rolla, and an MBA from Drake. After my undergraduate work, I started working for John Deere, and I was a test engineer and a design engineer. And then the last 10 years I worked there, I worked as a supply-based manager, negotiating contracts and cost reduction at $15 million a year using the win-win negotiations. After retiring from John Deere in 2009, I became a realtor with Caldwell Banker, where I still work in residential real estate. I attend Prairie Ridge Church, where I got involved in the Mitchellville Women's Prison Ministry for a year until it was shut down by COVID. And I've been a member of the Chamber for over 10 years. Recently, I served 6 years as a District 5C Judicial Commissioner, and my late husband, Representative John Landon, and I raised 2 children who attended K through 12 in Ankeny public schools. They're both married. I have 3 grandchildren, and they live with their parents in Polk County. This is the reason that I'm running for office, is to ensure that Iowa is the best place to work and raise a family. As a side note, I bought my first farm a year after going to work full-time for Deere. I still farm, and I understand the importance of ag business to the people of Iowa, since 1 in 3 private sector jobs are relating to farming. I've been door knocking through House District 41 all summer, and these are the 3 things that people are telling me should be important, my priorities for the legislative session. World-class education, safe and stable communities, and something to offset inflation, like lower taxes and good-paying jobs. These will be my priorities next year if I win the election. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Alex.
Great, thank you. So for the next round, we have questions, and reminder, 2 minutes, try to keep it to 2 minutes. The first question is for Garrett. It's, what can you do to bring civility to the election process and after you're elected?
I think this is a great question, and you see it in national debates all the time. I think all of us would hope for more civility than what we see sometimes when we're out there. I think what we all aspire to be, and what I aspire to be personally, is an example. How we speak, how we act, and how we behave. People are watching, especially once we're in office. I taught 8th grade for the last 4 years, and not always was my example followed by my 8th graders. But as I've gotten older, and as I've transitioned into a new job, I see that that is still necessary. I also have the benefit of having my wife be a Democrat, and my in-laws be relatively far to the left. I still get along with them. We still have great holidays. And I think that just needs to be the model. We used to be like that in this country and in this state. You could disagree, and you could still get along and have a nice conversation. We have to get back to that and realize that we're people over politics, as Molly said. We have to also make sure that when we get into office that we're not just pursuing our party's agenda, but something that benefits our own community. I have been honored to, in my freshman years, be able to pass several pieces of legislation, all of which passed with bipartisan support. And I'm proud to have done that, and I'm proud to keep doing that, because if we all are involved in the conversation, we can all win. As I've knocked doors, I've gotten to knock the district 4 times this year, finishing up the 4th time to be fair. I've talked to a lot of people, and we hear this stuff Marvis is talking about. We hear about inflation, we hear about schools, we hear about taxes. We also hear from people that are just tired of the political culture, of everyone being at each other's throats. And so that's where we need to lead by example. We need to make sure when we're in office, we're not just representing our party, but representing our community.
Well, I feel like anybody who spent 6 hours a day with 26 fifth graders might know a little bit about how to find civility. But seriously, I would really like to use what I teach at school every day. In Ankeny Community Schools, we use the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I really believe in using the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in my daily life. And I really firmly believe that 2 of these are of the utmost importance in politics, or should be. The first is habit 6 of the 7 habits, and it is seek first to understand before seeking to be understood. I feel like we really need to listen to the stories of other people, not to respond, but to grasp what the other person feels and believes before we express our own thoughts. We truly must do this so we see each other as people and not as an R or a D. Habit 5 of the 7 habits is also critical, and that habit is to think win-win. We are all Iowans, we are all smart, and if we put our heads together, we can come up with policies that benefit all Iowans. We should be more focused on the people of the state and not our own political parties. People over politics. It's our message, it's our mantra, it's not just the saying, it needs to be a truth. I want to go to the State House to serve this entire district. And if the last few years have taught us anything, the only way to do that would be to find common ground with fellow legislators, and I think the best way to do that is through polite civil discourse.
Well, I think that we can all agree that we're sick of all these negative ads. I hear people talking about that all the time, how sick they are, and going through the forwarding through and actually turn them off. I also hear people say that they want to stop PAC money, which I think would be a wonderful idea, except the Supreme Court said that corporations are people, so that is not something we're going to be able to do either. Like has been said before, really the civility comes from the candidate and the people and the way they treat each other. And of course, we all know the golden rule is to treat others like you'd like to be treated yourself. And being a good listener, not talking over people is the way to get along when we get down there. And I just think that the question was about the campaigning, and that's all I have to say.
This is an excellent question, and I'm so glad it was asked. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I believe that we are more than our party affiliation, and that we are neighbors first living in this community together. I am incredibly passionate about building civic engagement outside of elections, and I think that is what should be a focus for all of us. That's why I'm involved in local community organizations. That's why I've been able to build working relationships and, dare I say, friendships with elected officials on both sides of the aisle. And when we get to know each other outside of campaigns, we have the opportunity to build trusted partnerships with community members and other elected officials. Regarding the actual election process, I believe that honesty in advertising is paramount. For me personally, I only focus on actual voting records and the implications of those decisions when drawing a contrast with any opponent. In fact, I'm very careful in the language that I use because I know how much every single word matters. And I think we also really need to get outside of our bubbles. That's why I knock the doors of mostly no party and Republican voters. because I want to hear from people who are more likely than not going to disagree with me. We should always be looking to persuade and learn from each other in good faith. One of the things that I did when I was in the legislature before that I very much look forward to doing again, should I be lucky enough to win this election, is to return to office hours every Friday, as I did before during legislative session, and listening posts. Because constituent services and meeting people where they are at is one of the most important things that we can do as legislators. And I give my personal cell phone out to every single person that I talk to on the doors because accessibility matters.
All right, next question starts with Molly. It's how can the legislature help our schools have a high level of excellence? Besides funding, what initiatives do you propose?
All right, so I kind of took this question in two parts. The first question is how do we have our schools help our schools have a high level of excellence? And I just want to say that you really can't have a higher level of excellence without some higher level of funding. We're giving education 20% less than we did in the year 2000. And that's completely outside of inflation. We can't expect Iowa schools to be excellent with 20% less. Besides funding, excellent schools start with excellent teachers, excellent partnerships with parents, and positive community engagement. If we want our schools to be excellent, we have to stop diversive rhetoric that paints any part of our system as sinister. We have to find ways to work together and to bridge the gap. We have to stop blaming, we have to start solving. It is divisiveness that is driving away the human capital that we had in Iowa in education. We lost 80 teachers in Ankeny last year, we lost 500 in the metro. It isn't the lack of funding that's causing teachers to leave at an alarming rate. It's the disrespect and the vilifying of teachers who are already surviving on an Amazon wish list, guys. We have to commit to putting our students at the center, and we have to work diligently to ensure that we bring Iowa's public schools up to the top again. We must build partnerships with parents and teachers, and that starts with trust. As a teacher, what I witnessed during COVID with the divisiveness and the hostility was hard on kids, and our kids need to see us working together to solve problems. The one thing we have to do as a state is make sure that every child has an opportunity to succeed.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder for civility purposes, let's keep our applause and comments until the end so we can give them all a round of applause, but let's keep our applause to the end, please. Thanks. Margaret.
The Ankeny Schools 22 through 27 strategic plan mission statement says, the Ankeny Community School District engages all students in an educational experience that equips them with the skills to flourish and contribute to an ever-changing world. I would like to commend the teachers and the administration for the good work that they do, because in looking at the Iowa Department of Education report, Ankeny has one of the best performing schools in Iowa in all measures except the post-secondary readiness index, career and technical education. First, I would meet with the school board and administration to get their input on what help they need from the legislature regarding this and other issues. In the past, John Deere and DMAC put together programs for skilled job training such as welding and programming CNC equipment. If this is something that the school wants, I would support public investment in community college, high school training programs like these, because it is cost effective. Regarding Title IX, after door knocking through the district, I find that most of us are aware that the children are being asked by the teachers to pick their pronouns. I believe this is due to Title IX of Education Amendments of 1972, which prohibits discrimination based on sex in education programs and activities that receive federal financial assistance. If elected, I would like to work with the Ankeny School Board and the administration to write legislation to clarify how Iowa schools will handle Title IX. An example of this would be the law that was passed last session to protect girls' sports.
Well, I'm not sure if I can say it any better than Molly, but I'll give it my best. I believe that the legislature needs to recommit to being a partner in public education again. And honestly, a big part of that partnership is increasing funding above the rate of inflation in order to ensure that our kids have the resources that they need and that we can pay teachers a competitive wage. It is one thing to say that we are making record investments, which I know is said frequently, but the truth is, $1 more would also be a record investment, but that does not make it adequate. I also believe that the legislature needs to take local control seriously. Everyone is for local control until they are not, is what I have learned in the legislature. Locally elected school boards are often the best equipped to understand the needs of their unique communities. And when the legislature preempts or overrules their decision-making without a compelling state interest, it undermines the ability of districts to work in good faith with their teachers and staff. The massive amounts of staff turnover and leaving the profession due to threats from the legislature is what hinders excellence. We've seen a lot of that over the last couple of years, from the decimation of collective bargaining to saying teachers have a sinister agenda and trying to put cameras in classrooms. The legislature needs to end this language of contempt. And I strongly support reinstating and expanding collective bargaining for our educators to bring balance back to the negotiating table. We also need to make sure that we're keeping public dollars in public schools. The majority of Iowans oppose vouchers because they support strong community schools, and we need to keep it that way. Guys, we have no shortage of innovative ideas in school districts across the state, including in Ankeny. The Orbis program in Ankeny is a perfect example of that. And school districts need the resources and flexibility to fund the programs that they know will make a difference for their students.
Thank you.
This is a great question. And a lot of times you can think that money will just solve the problem. And as I've been in the legislature and we've looked at it, there's a lot of innovative ways that schools like Ankeny, with Orbis, are taking the next step with the dollars that they have. And so I would support continuing that career in technical education. I am no longer in the classroom, but I'm now working for a nonprofit named IJAG, whose job is to offer classes in schools that would prepare kids for work. Ankeny's doing a phenomenal job. Where Mark has mentioned we are a little behind is that college and career readiness. I'd like to see, whether it be IJAG or Orbis or any other great opportunities that are out there, that our students be prepared and that we offer internships and apprenticeships and other work-based learning for them in the school so that they can get that knowledge without having to pay for it at a college. I think also we should work to restore our schools as a center of community. During 2020 and the pandemic, there's a lot of information going around about schools, some true, some not true. It really eroded the trust, we can all agree that. That is why we have to rebuild that. That is what I've been working to do at the legislature. I push back on ill-conceived notions that have been thrown around about what teachers are or what teachers do. But I also recognize that we need to work forward and make our schools better every day. I think we can do that by focusing less on standardized testing, making sure that our students have skills rather than just the ability to take a test. I also think we need to continue our work reforming the Board of Educational Examiners. Last year we had a bill that would close up some loopholes that have allowed people who've abused children to jump from school district to school district, and agreements are made where if they retire, nothing is said. That sickens me, it sickens everyone up here. There's nothing worse to a good teacher than a bad teacher, and so I'd like to continue that work at the legislature.
Our next question will start with Marvis. The question is, our chamber members say workforce is one of their major concerns. What are your plans to help grow the workforce in Iowa?
So I took a look at the job openings in Iowa, and it's staggering, especially as it relates to the number of nurses, LPNs, teachers, retail sales, truckers, the list goes on. And then sometimes it makes you wonder how you can even get a COVID shot in Iowa because the number of people that are missing. Future Ready Iowa has been an outstanding and bipartisan program that has helped Iowans get the skill they need to enhance and strengthen their careers. I would support continued funding of Future Ready Iowa, in addition to funding registered apprenticeship programs which help individuals earn while they learn. I would also support STEM programming and other programs that help Iowans upskill. As mentioned before, as we were talking about the education, I would support public investment in private-public training programs through the community college because it is cost effective. And although I'm a proponent of free marketplace, this year the workforce has been restricting growth. And if this continues in '23, funding Iowa economic development to market outside Iowa may be effective. Due to the tax reform going from the 6th worst to the 5th best in the US this spring, Debbie Durham, who's the head of the Iowa Economic Development Commissions, has found that workers are more interested in relocating to Iowa to help with our unemployment situation.
Well, I think growing the workforce is absolutely the thing that I hear the most about from people all over the district. And I think the pieces here are focusing on lowering costs around childcare and housing, increasing the focus on quality of life initiatives to make Iowa a more welcoming state, and encouraging more people to move here. As far as childcare goes, we need to talk about supporting families, and we need to talk about supporting providers. For families, I support expanding childcare tax credits to help lower costs. The average cost for an infant in childcare is over $1,000 a month. We can also add more flexibility on payments into the Child Care Assistance Program so that families have more options with how many days a week their children need to be in a program. For supporting providers, I think we can do even more with individual communities on public-private partnerships to incentivize more spots for care while also incentivizing higher pay for that public investment. And I believe we can also, as a state, help with educational costs for people who want to be providers as a way to incentivize more people going into the field. That is something we do for other high-demand professions. As far as housing goes, housing is a cost challenge as well as a workforce challenge for all income levels. But I want to highlight a particular number. In Ankeny specifically, of the over 5,700 families who make less than $50,000 a year, 58% of them are cost burdened by housing, meaning that they spend over 30% of their income on rent. If we want to grow our workforce, we need to do two things: increase wages to help more families get ahead, and incentivize the development of more affordable housing that also leverages federal dollars. I know I'm running short on time, but we also need to talk about quality of life that includes being welcoming to everyone. People want to see in their elected leaders that they are valued and welcomed in their communities. When we have state leaders who threaten and devalue teachers or fight against equity, that is what pushes people away.
Garrett, thank you.
This is also, I mean, we're talking to the same people, so we're hearing a lot of the same stuff about workforce. As we talk with businesses, they just can't keep the doors open as much as they used to. And that's not right. We are restricting growth because we don't have enough people to work these jobs. And so a lot of it is attracting people here to Iowa. We've done a lot with broadband access. And I know in Ankeny it's fairly good, but I'm sure Molly would agree with me, during the pandemic, there were kids with less internet access than you would think right here in Ankeny. We need to make sure that even the rural parts of Iowa have access to that. So people might move from a Chicago, an LA, a St. Louis, any one of those major metropolitan areas where traffic is a pain, not that it's not a pain in Ankeny, and have a chance to live in a more affordable home with less of that big town travel and work remotely. We're seeing that a lot now after COVID. Also improving our tax rates. Marcus already mentioned, we cut our taxes from one of the most restrictive and most burdensome in the country to one of the least. We need to continue that work as long as we have a surplus, which we still do. We can still make investments in what we care about while making sure people get to keep their money. Keeping our community safe. That's another thing I hear at the door a lot. We need to make sure our police and our public safety officials have the funds and the resources they need to do their job. I've gotten to talk to the chief of police here in Ankeny several times. Several officers from the state patrol, I got to do a ride along. Their job is so difficult and they're up against so much that they need special resources. There's that incident a couple years ago where a dangerous individual took a couple troopers hostage and killed another, and they breached with a big truck that a lot of people would say, you don't need to fund that sort of stuff. Why would they ever need it? Well, they needed it then. And they showed me the bullet imprint on the windshield that would have gone right through a regular car that saved the officer in the breaching truck's life. So we got to support safe communities, lower taxes. That'll get people here.
I hear a lot of hardship stories going door to door from people in Ankeny, and honestly, when I started knocking doors, it's probably one of the things that surprised me the most in Ankeny was hearing how many people are struggling to make it. First of all, I'll say that a lot of people, even in Ankeny, are living paycheck to paycheck, and we've got to raise wages. We've got to work to find ways to raise wages. People also tell me what a barrier childcare is. I have one of the same statistics that Heather did, that people are paying upwards of $1,000 per child, and if you have 3 kids in your house and you're paying upwards of $3,000 a month for your children to go to childcare, one of you probably isn't going to join the workforce. And it's something I hear about a lot as I knock doors. People are making the choices between childcare and going to work. So we do need to incentivize programs to increase the affordability of childcare and the access to childcare. We also need more affordable housing. It's an issue for a lot of Iowans who are paying too much to live. We need to incentivize development of that as well. I think we also have to consider what kind of jobs we want to attract here in Iowa, as well as how we can keep our graduates here after they graduate. We can't be educating citizens just to have them graduate and ship out. I think lowering taxes for working class Iowans, access to affordable housing and childcare will also help keep our kids here after they graduate.
Reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to see Mark or Jen back there with their papers, and you can write them down there. We will have some time for group questions at the end. Our next question starts with you, Heather. It is, are Iowa's tax rates for property, sales, personal income, and corporate income taxes at the right level? If elected, what changes would you propose?
Thank you for the question. So when I was a baby, my parents built their dream home. My mom was in fact pregnant with my younger sister when they did it. And when I say they built it, I mean they physically built it themselves. They built a log cabin. That's what my parents did. But when I was in 6th grade, they made the decision to sell the house. And the reason why was because of property taxes, and that it was no longer affordable for them to live in their dream house. So I get it. This is a real concern, and it needs to be taken seriously. I don't want anyone in Ankeny to get priced out of the home that they love because of property taxes. And I'm always willing to work on ways to make sure that that doesn't happen. What I think we also need to remember, though, when it comes to taxes, especially income tax, is that if we don't fund things appropriately at the state level, like education, public safety, water quality, and healthcare, that gets passed down to each community in the form of higher property taxes. So I support a progressive income tax for individuals and corporations to ensure that everyone is paying their fair share and that we can fund our priorities. My concern with what the state legislature has been doing over the last couple years is that the tax cuts are going to the state's largest corporations and the wealthiest Iowans. They are the ones that have been prioritized. And in fact, about 500,000 tax filers will receive no tax cut under the so-called historic bill that was passed last year, or earlier this year. I support tax cuts that put working families and the middle class first, because that's who really needs them. So I just want to say that I take changes to tax policy incredibly seriously, and the bill that was passed in a matter of weeks with very little public input or debate within the legislature is a problem. Anything this drastic needs more consideration of the implications.
Thank you, Heather. Garrett?
There's a lot of taxes packed into that question, so I want to kind of separate them out a bit. As far as personal income tax, corporate tax, some of those others, we very clearly have a surplus at the state level of over $1 billion right now. And that is while we still increase funding for education and other systems like that, though impossible to keep up with the national level of inflation. We need to keep working on that. That money doesn't belong to be sitting in at the state level for us to just spend however we want. We need to get it back to you because that will spur further economic growth. The tax cut bill that we passed will be phased in over the next several years to the point where everyone will be paying the same level of tax. No matter your income, you'll be paying the same level of tax proportional to your income. That's fair to me. And I'm definitely in the lowest bracket. We need to work with our county supervisors in our cities to make sure that the property tax burden is also relieved. At the state level, we've already taken the mental health tax off of the property tax, and so we can fund it more equitably throughout the state and not put it on your property taxes. And I've also, a bill I passed at the end of last year is studying a DART's impact on the property tax levy, because right now Ankeny and some of the other suburbs are paying a disproportional amount on their property taxes to fund DART, and we're looking at some creative ways to take that off and lower that tax burden even more.
I've also heard a lot about taxes on the doors in Ankeny. I hear a lot about property taxes and how their property taxes have been lowered, but their housing values have just gone up. I think we need to consider ways to lower taxes. I think we need to consider where the majority of our tax burden lies. For giving tax breaks to bring in businesses and corporations, and their workers are still using our schools and our roads and our services while working Iowa families are bearing the brunt of the tax burden. I think we really need to consider where our tax burden is lying. In addition, the flat tax that just passed is 3.9%, and I realize it'll phase in over time, but when I looked at the statistics for that, an average family making $45,000 would see a reduction in income tax of less than $50 a month, and I just don't feel like that is going to really help a family that's only making $45,000 a year. For people who are making $1 million a year, that's $66,000 a year. So I feel like the tax is really tipped towards helping wealthy Iowans. I've talked to a lot of small business owners on the door too, and I really think we have to make sure that we're not leaving small businesses behind either. I've actually had really interesting conversations with small business owners about making taxes for small businesses easier to manage, and also incentivizing small businesses being able to give things like health care or health benefits to their workers. So I think there is a lot to look at with our taxes.
So I too have been hearing this a lot at the door. Almost the first thing people come up and talk to you about is property tax. Because businesses and individuals are having trouble making ends meet. We have almost a $2 billion surplus in Iowa right now, and this combination means to me that we need to do something to help. In 2022, the Iowa legislature voted to change the Iowa income tax rate from the 6th highest to the 5th lowest, which would help people's wallets. These guys have talked a little bit about that. The legislature also eliminated state tax on retirement income. So a lot of the folks that were going to be moving out of state have said to me that they're going to stay in state now. This year's tax bill changed the top corporate rate from 9.8 to 8.4% for 2023. And there's a threshold of corporate income tax that a certain amount of dollars has to be triggered before that reduction can happen. So that was triggered and it came down. The Revenue Estimating Committee is projecting a decrease for next year, which may be an indication that the tax changes are working. Now, as I mentioned, Ankeny voters are talking about property taxes in light of inflated assessments in Polk County. Next July, they're supposed to go up 17 to 22% increase in Polk County, or in Ankeny. Our taxes are 1.9 to 2% of the assessed value. So I think we need to take a look at changing the formula and capping the increase, because that's going to be something that will probably gonna put some folks out of home if we don't get that capped.
All right, our last prepared question is, we'll start with Gary, and it's, the COVID pandemic has escalated mental health issues across Iowa. While some changes to the system have been made, what measures would you support to further improve access?
This has always been a really important part of why I ran for office, and some of it comes from seeing students struggle with mental illness, seeing parents struggle with mental illness, and for me personally, seeing myself and some members of my family struggle with some mental illnesses too, such as depression and anxiety. It's everywhere. We can't ignore it. We have to talk about it. And I think that's one of the main barriers right now to care, is that people aren't willing to ask for that help. So I think we really need to work on, as a state and as local communities, publishing the information of where people can find those resources. There was a bill considered was an amendment considered last year that unfortunately didn't make it, that would have put the number for the mental health crisis tip line on the back of student IDs at schools. I want to renew that push, and that was by Representative Brown Powers, who you know, from Waterloo? Yes. I think that's a great idea. Simple, common, let people know what resources are out there. I think we also need to make sure that there's enough beds and facilities throughout the state. In Polk County, we have a lot of beds, but we also have a lot of people coming here because this is one of the main centers of care. And I was touring Blank Hospital, and they were saying how they were putting kids in the emergency room for mental health related, whether it was threats to themselves or others. They shouldn't be in an emergency room. That's not the type of care they need. We need to make sure that they have the beds with the professionals that can help them. And with that, I'd like to fund and put more mental health professionals in our schools, whether they're shared within districts or dedicated purely to one school. We are counting on our school counselors to do a lot. Make schedules is way more than enough for just one job, but we also need to make sure that they have either the training to handle some of these mental health crises, or they have the support system of other people in their building that can help them, so we aren't putting that on the back burner of student issues.
First of all, we're dead last in the nation per capita for beds in mental health. Dead last. We only have 78 beds for children in mental health, and I, like you, have seen the effects of untreated mental health issues every day in our schools. Every day. And it is an issue that affects children and adults. When kids come to school with underlying mental health issues, learning is difficult, if not next to impossible. But not only that, when they come to school trying to deal with the mental health issues of their caregivers and the adults in their lives, it's absolutely detrimental to their learning and their well-being. Our current legislation has said yes, that they recognize the gap, but there's been really no funding for mental health. We keep talking about this huge surplus of money that we have right now. Iowa's gonna need to respond to mental health by funding it. When you prioritize something, you fund it. And the only way we're gonna help the people who need help is by expanding the resources. We have to invest. We have to invest in beds. We have to invest in counselors. We have to invest in social workers, psych nurses, all of those things. We have to invest. So I really think we need to take a chunk of that surplus and look at investing in mental health in the state.
So we've talked about beds. I also think that a big restriction is the number of mental health care providers. I think it's also like at the very bottom compared to the rest of the state, the rest of the U.S. As mentioned before, due to the improved income tax structure, I think that we can start trying to bring mental health providers from out of state, and that would be like my first step, because I'm assuming that we would bring people in who are already trained. And then we need to start working on getting them trained up. Iowa universities and programs to pay off tuition a period of years, and if they graduate, they stay in the targeted areas where we need healthcare providers, that type of program. Also, refundable tax credits for mental health providers would be another step. But I definitely agree we need to do something.
Well, mental health care has definitely been our greatest human services challenge for a while, and it continues to be, and a robust system is still very much lacking in the state. I was proud to vote for the Children's Mental Health Program in 2019, but it was just a first step, and as Molly has said, we desperately need more funding for beds all over the state. And I also want to make sure that people understand that while some advancements have been made, it's just taking too long to get some of this stuff up and running. And one of those things are critical services like access centers across the state that are meant to provide that short-term care to Iowans in crisis. We need to move that along faster. I definitely support efforts to recruit and retain more providers and fund more beds. We also need to ensure that hospitals and communities across the state are able to stay open so that infrastructure is there to add services. We're fortunate to have Broadlawns in this community leading the way on mental health services, but they cannot do it alone. It's also really important for us to think about how sometimes mental health care, like physical health, is more than just crisis intervention. There are social determinants of health, the outside factors that lead to poor healthcare outcomes. And let's be honest, people are increasingly facing chronic stress due to economic insecurity. And it's also important for policymakers to focus our efforts on the ways that we can help Iowans not just survive, but thrive and reduce some of those stressors. Things like food security, housing, childcare, education, and job security. But we need the political willpower to meet this moment in a way that truly helps Iowans flourish.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. This will start with Molly, and the question is, what is your position on public funding of private schools?
I am not in favor of public funding for private or parochial schools. I truly believe that our public tax dollars belongs in public schools. How long did you want me to talk? Sorry.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks. I really believe that when you take that money and you take it away from public schools, you're going to really harm public schools and the services that they can offer, especially in rural communities. And I know that we are not in Ankeny a rural community, but we have to consider communities across Iowa. And I come from a small rural town, and if somebody would have taken money away from my school, we wouldn't have been able to function. In addition to that, private and parochial schools, they don't have to accept everybody. They don't offer the same services that public schools offer, so those resources aren't even available to every Iowan. If my student needs special education services, then that's not somewhere that they're able to go. And I really think that our public money needs to stay with institutions that take everybody, that are inclusive of everybody, and that's my opinion.
So the education savings accounts is what was discussed last year. And I have been told that it may or may not look the same for next year, but I want to describe what it looked like this year. And as I understood it for Ankeny, about, I don't know, 40 to 45% of the money would have followed the student, and the other 55% would have stayed in the school. So that means that you don't have the burden or the job of educating the child, but the money, 55% of the money stays there. This sounds good, but I think there's a couple of problems that are associated with that and that haven't been worked out. And one of them is if the parents are not satisfied with the private education that they're going to and want to come back, the money doesn't come back, and so we pay in arrears, and that's an issue that would have to be resolved. The other issue is that private schools typically don't offer individual education plans. And as Molly referenced, that is problematic if we just take children to these private schools that don't need the resources that the public education offers. And I might add that I'm seeing on the budget for Ankeny that we're sliding in regard to the IEPs. We're about $5 million in the hole every year.
Well, I am strongly opposed to vouchers and using public dollars for private schools. And I just want to echo everything that Molly said. I couldn't agree more. And just to piggyback on that a little bit, if a student or a family chooses to send their student to a private school, for example, and this is just as it exists right now, right? And that child needs special education services, then the public school district that they would otherwise belong to also pays, even though they are not getting the money, right, for that child, right, in the system, they pay to bus the student to the public school to get the services, pay for those services, and then bus the student back. And so these are the things that we also have to be considering when it comes to vouchers. Just knowing that our school districts desperately need the funding, and we cannot risk them losing even more of it when it comes to vouchers.
I think the points that have been made up here are phenomenal. That we need to make sure that there is public money already going to private schools in some ways, and we need to make sure that if that system was to be expanded, that so is the student accessibility to those places. What Heather just mentioned, I think, is completely unfair, and I think we need to change that. If the private school is taking the IEP student, they should have the burden of, if not paid, if the public school is providing the services, they're paying the public school for them. We need to make sure that it's equitable and it's fair. This is one thing that, if you were paying attention to the legislative session, you saw got us into overtime last year. And this is one thing where I think one of my strengths as your legislator is speaking truth to power. And I disagreed with the governor's plan. And I spent countless hours with her team and with other legislators trying to figure out a way where we could increase access for those who aren't getting the resources they need in a public school, but without unregulated funds going to a private school. So the devil is going to be in the details for this. We know this is going to be a proposal that is brought back. I can promise you that I will make sure that whatever happens, whether it happens or doesn't happen, that we work for Ankeny, that we make sure you guys have the choice, whether it's taking your kid to another public school or taking your kid to a private school, that you have the freedom to do that. I'm just happy to be in this position because I feel like as an educator down at the legislature, my perspective really helped some of the discussions last year. And though we never got to a final version of a bill, the momentum is moving back toward making sure the system is fair and balanced, no matter what it may look like.
Thank you. Now we'll have time for closing comments. Each of you will have 3 minutes, and we'll start with Marvis.
Once again, I'm truly grateful to all of you for being here this evening and having this opportunity to have this open exchange. There are 3 issues that people in Ankeny have told me that I should be focused on this upcoming session: world-class education, safe and stable communities, and something to offset inflation, such as lower property taxes. Ankeny voters want their kids to have an in-school option and to be focused on reading, math, and science, and less on social issues while they are there. I will work with the Ankeny School Board and administration to introduce legislation to get that job done, as I mentioned. It was only 2 years ago, when the school board kept our kids out of school, that the community learned that the local elections matter. Ankeny Representatives Gobble and Landon met with the parents who wanted their children back in school and sponsored a bill to give every Iowa child an in-school option. That bill became law, and I was an advisor to that bill. And this is the reason that I am running for office, to ensure that Iowa is the best place to work and raise a family. Door knocking gives a unique opportunity to hear from the community. State patrolmen and police who serve in Polk County cities tell me that the gangs in Polk County are responsible for the increased shootings in the last year. I'm also hearing that the illegal drugs coming over the border from Mexico are a contributing factor. And many of you may know of people who've lost children to drugs here in Ankeny recently. I had a friend who did. One of my priorities is to fully fund the Department of Public Safety to hire and equip good people to keep Iowans safe. Businesses and voters are struggling to make ends meet. In 2022, the Iowa legislature voted to change the Iowa income tax, as we discussed. The legislature also eliminated eliminated state tax on retirement income. Now Ankeny voters are talking about the property taxes, as we've discussed, going up 17 to 22% next year. By the way, 50% of that goes to the schools, 25% to the city, and 25% to Polk County. I think it's time for us to take a look at the formula to limit the amount that this assessment can go up. I have faith that we can work together on the issues to make Iowa a great place to work and raise a family. If you live in House District 41, I ask for your vote whenever you vote between now and November 8th, and thank you very much.
Thank you again to the Chamber and to everyone for being here tonight. I have really enjoyed this discussion with all of you. When I first moved here in 2003, Tom Vilsack was governor, and one of the things he said all the time was that Iowa should be a great place to live, work, and raise a family. And that is something that has always stuck with me, and is a reason why I love public service. It is to make sure that this state is a great place for every single person in it. No matter where you are on the political spectrum, it's easy to feel like the world is a lot right now. There's no doubt that we have some big challenges. Working families are struggling to get by, reproductive freedom is under attack, and climate change is a crisis that must be addressed, just to name a few. And I know that I'm not alone in worrying about the level of divisiveness and contempt in our politics sometimes. And sometimes it can feel like people are either screaming at each other or just not talking. But if we don't talk to each other, then we most certainly cannot solve real problems. But for as many challenges as we face, I also see tremendous opportunities. As a parent of 2 middle schoolers, I see examples of innovation in our schools every day. As a local service organization volunteer, I see individuals showing up to build a community that leads with a spirit of compassion and connection. I see friends and neighbors showing up to city council, school board, and legislative committee meetings to share their experiences and working to solve real problems in a true spirit of civic engagement. And as I'm out knocking doors, what I hear the most from voters is, thank you for showing up at their doors and here in our community. I tell everyone that I cannot promise that we'll agree on everything. It is impossible. And I can't promise that we'll be happy with every single vote that I take. But what I can promise is that I'm always available to listen and to hear your concerns, and that you might even change my mind. It has been known to happen. That's why I put my personal cell phone on all of my door knocking cards, because accessibility matters. I hope you'll take the time to visit my website, which is matsonforiowa.com, to learn more. I'll also be happy to stay afterwards to answer questions. And most importantly, I want to thank you again for being here, and I want to ask you, if you live in House District 42, I ask you for your vote on or before November 8th. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank the Chamber and all the volunteers that once again made this a great success. If you aren't aware, they also have legislative updates during the session that they put on just as well as they did here tonight. I was elected in 2020 because you wanted a representative that would listen to you and your concerns. I haven't forgotten that. My focus will be always to listen to you, your concerns, and act on your priorities, no matter how it might buck my party at the Capitol or how many people might give me dirty looks, because I won't just do what they want me to do. I'll be a representative that seeks your input and your feedback so I can always better represent you. Despite the narrative you see in the national news, we have far more that unite us than divides us. We need to normalize working across the aisle, something I've been proud to do these last 2 years. I can truly say the only time I was completely opposed to the other party was during the inaugural legislative softball game this last summer. And I performed better in that than I ever did in any other sport in my life. So no one filmed it, you just have to take my word. Nearly every bill I sponsored passed with bipartisan support, which is something I pledge to continue. As long as I can talk to the other side, I get more perspective. It doesn't matter where we come from, whether we're a suburb, a city, or rural, we all have different people that we represent, and we are all determined to represent those people. My focus is results for you, not for party or outside groups. I work with anyone with the goal of a stronger Iowa and better lives for our families. As I've said before, I'm a new parent, and my goal is also renewed commitment to the next generation of Iowans. We need to take care of everyone from birth to death and make sure that they have a place here in Iowa. Thank you.
I would just like to thank everyone for coming, and this has been wonderful. I'm new to politics, and so this has been very refreshing. I can honestly say that I was very nervous coming in today, and you all made this very easy, and thank you to the Chamber for putting this on and for everyone for coming. It's been wonderful. One of the things that really stands out to me is that as these questions were discussed today, how much all of the policies affect and impact the daily lives of families. They impact the students that I teach every day. Every day, these issues trickle down into our most vulnerable Iowans, our kids. And honestly, that's what really pushed me to run for this office, is what I see up close in the classroom on a daily basis. And I know that these are adult problems and adult issues, I get that, but they affect our kids. And it is so important that we put our hatred and our division and the divisive rhetoric that happens to rest. And that we can come together as people and start working on common sense solutions that work for people, not Democrats, not Republicans, people, Iowans. And I hope it can start right here in Ankeny. I know that we can increase access to affordable childcare so that people can get back to work. And I know that we can raise wages so the stresses on families are lighter. And I know we can invest in mental health so that our children have fewer adverse experiences. And I know we can invest in counselors and social workers so that our kids can stay in school. And I know we can lower prescription drug costs so families can afford to stay healthy. There are countless ways that we can improve the quality of life for every Iowan. And I know that I can be a voice not only for education, but a voice for Ankeny. And I truly believe in putting people over politics. And that is why, on or before November 8th, if you live in House District 41, I hope you vote for me.
Now's a good time for a round of applause for all the So, on behalf of the Ankeny Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you to the public for joining us tonight. Reminder that election night is 2 weeks away, November 8th. Polls will be open from 7 to 8, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can go to the Secretary of State's website or the Polk County Auditors. And that concludes this portion. At 7:30, we will have Senate District 21. Hopefully you can stick around. Thank you.
Thank you.